Good morning, madam.
Good morning.
Leo nimekuita madam, mimi sipendi kuitwa madam na naita watu madam.
Mimi ndo nashtuka bana.
It's
hiyo ni kwanza nikunizeesha.
Manze pole man, I am apologizing for that. Leo naona hapa studio ni kama Gerald ndo anahitaji affirmative action kwa sababu ratio ya girl child to boy child here. which is actually a good thing. I think we need to empower more women so that men can understand what it means to clamor for affirmative action for a gender balance, because they really don't get it right now. The glass ceilings are real. I've heard you say a lot of good things that the commission is doing, but then I have a problem with a lot of the things that you've said, because qua ground my reality is totally different. You say things like someone who has the privilege of air-conditioned office and a dark-tinted glass car that you really don't understand the struggle, especially when it comes to AGPO. And this is where I have a problem with. I feel like the matters concerning youth have been bundled together with so much other things that we don't get the attention that we need. I mean, if we are 75% of the population, then I think government works for us. But then in this case, it really doesn't. Because the problem with all these affirmative actions that have been given unto us first is nobody came and measured our capacity. So you all assumed youths are unemployed, let's give them a fund that is going to enable them to start businesses. But then entrepreneurship is a skill. There is minimal to zero training when these funds are given. People go, if they manage to start a business, it fails. They're unable to pay that loan. When it comes to AGPO, people get these tenders. When young ordinary people who come from Eastlands and the ghetto wanna manage kupata this tender somehow, the payment takes forever to come. I actually know of a gentleman from Machakos who committed suicide because he took a loan to finance a tender that he'd gotten. The government took 100 years to pay him back. The debtors came knocking. He got frustrated, and the only solution he could think of was killing himself. Now, these affirmative actions are given with good intention, but then their practicality is just not really applicable. And then no one comes to do monitoring and evaluation so that they can be improved to adapt to the challenges that they find during the first phase of implementation. So in as much as you're listing all these good things, what is the impact on the ground? What is the effect? Have they progressed? What are the challenges that you guys are meeting in the implementation of all these good policies that we have? And if you meet these challenges, how or what measures are you taking to adapt to them? Because just listing these things like it's like you're ticking a bucket list. Oh, affirmative action for young women, tick. Affirmative underwear for young boys when girls are getting sanitary towels, tick. It's nobody ever comes back to check on the baby that they delivered. It's outrageous, and it's really frustrating for us young people. Extremely frustrating, and we feel like this commission hasn't done the job that it's supposed to do, which includes oversight. Because there is no oversight when it comes to affirmative action of young people, at least not to a level that impacts us or we are able to even feel or recognize. And it is sad, because then you come here and you talk and it feels like, oh, she's just talking because she has to. Nothing really is going on.
Mheshimiwa?
Yes.
Nimesikia maneno.
Nimesikia maneno, and really,
ndio vijana sasa.
Yeah, it is true, and I feel the sadness and I feel the frustration, and I have seen it as well. And it is indeed true that a lot more needs to be done. So ni ukweli. Commissions like my own, of course, unfortunately, because of the situations we find ourselves, we never quite have enough funding. Like one of my sort of saddest moments is that we haven't been able to do a county audit. I had really wanted us to move into the counties and to see what are the counties doing and where is the impact of what the counties are doing. Because many counties also have set up special funds for young people, and to just check whether those funds are actually delivering. And I served as women rep before in Nyeri, and so spent a lot of time with young people on the questions that you raise about training, on the questions of using sports for development. in fact, my own vision then was that we need to use the sports group as economic groups as well. And there are countries where sports groups own buildings and sports groups own businesses. And I one of these days, if I go back to Nyeri, that is still something I would want to really pursue. But it's true that we need to do a lot, and the Commission is trying to do its part. We do have advisories that we have issued on the YAGPO, which is what we call it, the Youth Access to Government Opportunities. We have issued a lot of YAGPOs. Remember, this matter was also not in law, so we followed a lot the bill that Honorable Sakaja had brought onto the Procurement Act to make sure that these matters are law. And now that these matters are law, the question still remains enforcement. In the commission where I work with, we are usually very clear on what type of tenders and contracts can go to young people. But it's true, that particular area needs monitoring and evaluation. But the one that I want to point out, and it will happen when we move on to the counties, will be the Biashara Fund. There's going to be a 10 billion Biashara Fund coming on board. I know, I can already see you shaking your head. But don't worry, don't shake your head.
It's, you know, here's the thing. We keep branding and rebranding and renaming and coalescing and bringing together, but then we don't change the structures. We don't vet the people who we put in charge. And I can tell you the Biashara Fund is just going to flop like the Youth Enterprise Development Fund.
What has happened? You know, you first deliver a baby. You don't strangle the baby that you're delivering. So unazaa kwanza bwana. Sasa mtoto azaliwe. Sasa huyo mtoto biashara.
Sasa mtoto amemea ndevu na unataka kuzaa tena mwingine. Unajarekebisha ule wa kwanza. Ule wa kwanza amemea ndevu amekuwa mzee.
Sasa nielezee, unajua hii Biashara Fund vile imefanya, nimeangalia lessons za Youth Fund. Lucia anasema kwamba ukweli Youth Fund imework to some extent, na kuna places pia haijawork. Ni a mixed bag. Nyingine imework, nyingine haijawork. Pia Women Fund the same. Repayments za zote mbili by the way ziko poa, which means watu wanajaribu even with the challenges that we have. So what Biashara Fund is now coming to do is to take the lessons of what we have learned, grow that kitty more, and then have one administration mechanism, so that administration mechanism is also cheaper for all the funds, and then retake this matter again. Alafu pia challenge ingine imetokea. We also can't push all our young people to entrepreneurship. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. We must also have other ways in which we are assisting young people. Na ni ukweli, hii conversation ya youth ni lazima iwekwe kwa meza. Sasa haiwezi ya kwa mahali pengine, ni lazima iwekwe kwa meza. Na utaona kwa hizo recommendations za BBI, we are proposing to pick what they have in the small business administration, where you combine counseling, you combine capital, and you combine contracts. Juu siku hizi mtu mwenye ako na contract hana capital, mwenye ako na capital hajui ataanza wapi mambo za kufungua kampuni and all of that. So you put all of those things under one roof and you take it up. Na ukiangalia hata hiyo youth commission saa hii, kama mimi nilikuwa na fight sana, isipewe tena wazee ndo wanakuja kuongoza mambo za youth. PWDs husema nothing for us without us. So I think now even for Lucia it will be nothing for the youth without the youth. I think that the bureaucrats can no longer just sit somewhere and design a program for young people. We must now go and engage young people. We can't just sit and say this is the solution for young people. The young people must tell us what are the solutions to some of the problems that they see. And it is true, it's taken time. The women's movement took a lot of time to get the achievements that it has. So even for the youth, the idea is not to give up. And I hear the questions of mental health and suicide. Again, we really must do something to mental health. I have seen the frustration, I've seen the hopelessness, and it is really, really bad, and especially young men. In my own county of Nyeri, our youth, young men suicides are very, very high. So we really must be able to take care of mental health. And as we move forward, I also agree on the selection of people who come to do the work that we're talking about. That also is important, but mostly also election, that we elect good leaders. Because the countries that are doing well on youth issues are the countries that have leaders who are taking this problem seriously and not using it for corruption. We have seen our NYS 1 and NYS 2 used as corruption dens instead of using them for empowerment of young people. So it's true that there are many, many challenges of youth that need to be tackled. The Commission tackles those that it can. It's just that from the Kibaki government up to the Uhuru government, the youth funds have been part of the solution. And we've seen some of the groups trying to do something good with the youth funds. But that model and that mechanism must be evaluated to see whether it is delivering, a new mechanism set up. lakini watu wasi give up na watu wasiogope na watu waseme bora uhai. Hapa si pale pa bora uhai, hapa ni bora youth waendelee. Tuachane na bora uhai. When we are on Twitter, wherever we are pushing these programs forward. Huku kwa BBI, where I served as one of the experts, I can tell you, youth wengi hawaku engage. Hata Lucia bana, hizi idea unaleta sasa, ungeleta kule bana, tuone kama we could have put them in somewhere.
Alikuwa huko.
I did not engage.
Huku mwana na wewe ndio ulikuwa unachukua.
There are no youth measures. Zimewekwa kwa report, lakini next time bana, siku lialia kwa mtandao ikitokeza.
No, I actually let's get into the BBI, then I'll talk
about
my
BBI
frustrations.
Kabla tujaenda kwa BBI, niko na maswali mbili ya mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa, niko na swali mbili kwako.
Poa.
Ya kwanza, the first thing is you are already sitting in a commission.
Yes.
That is National Gender Equality Commission, right? And you've not been able to achieve much.
Yes, because of funding.
But you believe a youth commission will achieve much? You believe another commission on top of a commission will be able to achieve much?
Yes, the good thing is that now, with our commission, we had 6 special interest groups, I told you. And because of gender commission, we spend quite a bit of time on women. Remember, women have also had the same problems that the youth have. And we still continue to have problems of women, as we discussed earlier, gender-based violence, FGM, and all of those other problems, including that the women representation, because these solutions are in representation. Remember, every year we pass a budget. So that is why we need people in parliament, when the budget is passing, to ask what Lucia is asking. Where are the youth funds and where is the impact of the youth funds? So representation also remains important. So women is a big part of our commission's work. And then the elderly, the children, the persons with disability who also have another commission, and then the minorities and marginalized groups. So now what will happen with a youth commission is that it concentrates on matters of youth. It has no other groups to deal with. And that is a much better way. I mean, specialization has its place. If you look at the specialized commissions, they tend to deliver more than when a commission has a lot more work to do, which is also the argument we use against merging us with the Human Rights Commission. That if you merge gender with human rights issues, then the gender issues will be forgotten. You must have a gender commission that addresses the matters of gender inequality. But now, 10 years after the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we have also come to the realization that the youth issues are also so heavy and so important and so urgent that you need a youth commission to deal with those matters. And you can look at the functions that have been put in the BBI for the youth commission.
But Mheshimiwa, the youth have a whole ministry. The youth have a whole ministry.
Yeah,
and we have NYC.
And yes, apart from a youth ministry, we have the National Youth Commission, whose work, by the way, is to do everything that you're saying the commission is coming to do. So why are we duplicating roles, especially in the wake of the president telling us that his government is going to undertake austerity measures? Why do we want to duplicate it again? We have a State Department of Youth, an entire State Department of Youth, headed by an old man. I'm so pissed. Headed by an old man, by the way. We have the National Youth Council, which is spread across the country. These two have not been effective. And I keep hearing you saying that one of the biggest challenges is funding. So where is the funding going to come for, to cater for an extra commission that should look into youth matters? Wouldn't it be cheaper and more prudent to build the capacity of the National Youth Council as is and create a specific ministry for young people, for youth affairs, the way it was in the Kibaki era, rather than bundling youth affairs and just making it a state department in the Ministry of Sport or in the Ministry of ICT or in the Ministry of Gender? Shouldn't we just have a standalone youth ministry? Because then what's the need? And my question is, where is the funding going to come from for this youth commission? If the National Youth Council doesn't have funding, your commission doesn't have funding, the State Department of Youth doesn't have funding, the entire government doesn't have funding, where is the funding going to come from for this extra one?
Good questions there. But I think that the bigger question is, with funding, it's prioritization. You fund what you prioritize. So one of the things we just haven't had is that these particular matters have not been prioritized, and that is why they have not been funded. Otherwise, once they are prioritized, and which is why we are asking to send very, very strong representatives. You know, now the youth have 2 positions in the National Assembly. The PWDs have 4 positions in the National Assembly. The women can be elected in the 360, and the women can be nominated as top-up if they are not elected in the rightful numbers. So it is actually the leaders that prioritize these particular matters, and not prioritize them in speech and in shows like the one we are on. It is prioritize them indeed. And when you go to Parliament, it is really a jungle out there. I went to Parliament as a 34-year-old, and I was really ready like Lucia. Even me, I was bubbling with ideas and anger. Nikufika huko nikakuta utazeeka. Kwanza imagine that is the only message. How old are you? 34. Mwaka moja ya kutusumbua hapa.
So utake stress uzeeke, utake stress mzee.
Quickly become women. We had to quickly go to the women's movement. The youth hakukuwa na space. Kwa flow hata uwezi ongea for being a young person. Women sahi flow ukiambia speaker gender. Speaker ni lazima akuite uongee, you contribute to a motion. So it is a real problem that we really must face. When matters of education, for example, are in discussion, and the sort of education system that we have, and whether it is delivering for the economy. So nina hope kwamba hizi questions tuna discuss. Bunge yetu ukienda tu unaezalia. Utakuta sasa kama hii position ya prime minister ndio ina take a lot of time under discussion, but let to discuss the questions like we are asking. For example, where will the funding come from for youth issues? And once we prioritize some of these questions, once we have leaders that prioritize these questions, definitely the funding will be available. Just the way we have funding for roads, the way we have funding for agriculture, the way we have funding for health, is the way we're going to get funding for youth affairs. And then you're right about the ministry. The only problem with ministries is that the president and a regime, the president in power and the president who is ruling the country, has a lot of leeway in what ministries to create given his or her manifesto. And so you cannot determine whether they will create a youth ministry. The president we have now had created the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Gender, Youth and Public Service. Has now created the Ministry of ICT and Youth. So you cannot be sure if the president is going to create a youth ministry. That is why, as a people, because the constitution is a people's document, you then choose to have a commission, which you will always have, whether the president sets up a Ministry of Youth or not. It would be advisable in our country that a president sets up a Ministry of Youth. But now you cannot quite determine because they have a limited number of ministries to set. But once it is a commission, you will always have it. And the good thing with the commission is that expertise and specialization and skills can come through. Remember, this question is also in Africa. For me, one of the saddest things about the youth is that the UN now has a lot of conventions on women, including the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. In Africa, we have the Maputo Protocol on the Rights of Women, where African heads of governments and states have agreed to a protocol on women issues. The youth need a UN convention. The youth need an African Union protocol on the matters of youth. The youth are also, we need to learn from Ghana, we need to learn from Rwanda, we need to learn from other countries what they have done on the youth question. And so that is the good thing with the Youth Commission. It can now come and really localize all of those matters. In terms of the counties here, I know counties that are setting up industrial parks, like what the governor of Uasin Gishu, Mandago, is doing in Uasin Gishu. That industrial park is a job creation center. So you also want to see the counties here. The county of Nakuru, for example, promised now over 20 billion in the BBI. What are they going to do with the 20 billion for the purposes of youth programs and youth empowerment? And that will require a dedicated 24/7 commission that is just doing nothing but pursuing the youth questions. Otherwise, if you are doing this and doing other things, we have seen that the experience is not exactly taking us to where we want to go. And if you look at the functions of the Youth Commission, you will see there it is to advise national and county governments on youth programs, to monitor, to evaluate. All the weaknesses we have had before on the youth matters will now be addressed through that commission. But you're right.
I want to expand on what Lucia has mentioned, and you've accepted it, but you've not really come out clearly. Huh?
Watu wakichagua wachague viongozi ambao wataweza kupeleka masuala haya mbele, kwa sababu huko bunge ni ukweli kuna hitaji a proper focus on youth matters. NYC, the National Youth Council, got arrested by politics. I was the lawyer who took the National Youth Council to the budget process for them to get funding for the election. It is true that the National Youth Council has also had a lot of political interference, even in our counties. I see the NYC, one of my own personal assistants was actually, I nilimtoka kwa NYC having noticed a lot of talent in the work that Betty, the young lady, was doing. But a lot of politics has also been taken into the youth matters. The youth themselves have also been political. So we have to disentangle a lot of problems for us to be able to get to this matter.
But now, Mheshimiwa, there's something that Lucia has mentioned, and I would request to expand on it, on the issues of funding. You've rightfully said that the reason why most of the commissions in this country have not been able to perform is because of funding. That is about the biggest problem that you've listed. NYC is struggling because of funding. You guys at National Equality, Gender Equality are also struggling because of funding. The government itself is also struggling because of funding. Everything is struggling because of funding. You've also mentioned about the election, electing proper leaders. I don't know if you're trying to suggest that the government that we have in place right now is not the right government or the right leaders. But anyway, let me go back to the funding. You sat at the BBI committee. You're part of the experts who are formulating the document, the BBI document. And you've rightly mentioned the solution that we've given for different sectors. And in your interest, you've mentioned about youth, about the National, the Youth Commission you've already talked about. You are sitting in a place where you're saying we cannot perform. Our hands are tied, literally, because of funding. When you guys are formulating this document, did you ever sit down and ask yourself where we're going to get this funding from? Because when you talk about priority, you cannot prioritize what you don't have. As we speak right now, CBK brought in the red light the other day that actually the country is struggling to even fund itself. We are going to get an extra almost 1.8 trillion to fund an expanded budget that we have right now in this financial year. As we are talking about all these things, all these goodies and the sweets and the icing cakes, you're going to get a youth commission, counties, you're going to get this, you're going to get more MPs and more representation. At what point did we sit back? Even because when the president, actually, I remember towards 2017, some of the questions that were coming up to the president was, you've been in power since 2013. Why is it that you've not achieved much as Kibaki did achieve? And he mentioned that the difference between him and Kibaki is that Kibaki had a leaner government. And he's saying, for me, I have a bigger government because of devolution. But the president simply, at this point, believes that expanding the government is going to achieve more. Let's look at the BBI document. At what point did you guys sit back and say, this is where we're going to get the money to fund the increased MPs, you're going to get the money to fund the commissions that we're going to run, while you guys are sitting in commissions that are struggling now with funds? Where is the common sense in that?
Thank you. Wewe ungeniambia huku nakuja kupata makombora. You told me.
Si makombora, nione maswali. Unajua ni vijana.
Ndio kwa maana inaitwa the tackle.
Makombora ndio zinasaviwa.
Pole. Pole.
No worries at all. Sasa, you are right on the questions that you are raising about the funding. And we did spend a lot of time at the BBI on this. But I had personally really favored a percentages approach. For example, in Parliament, we had really proposed that Parliament should stay on 1.5%. Parliament is now on a budget of 1.5% of the national revenue. And this budget should not be increased. Parliament should be given the 1.5%, and it must accommodate the representation that we now are going to have within the 1.5% without any additional resources from the taxpayers. So that means that you organize internally, you reorganize internally. On the commissions, there is clause 249(3) of the Constitution of Kenya around funding of commissions. And we had really pushed very hard to have those commissions take their budgets directly to Parliament. But then also that that particular clause is respected by Parliament, that the commissions are given the funding that they require and that they desire so that they can then do the work that they're supposed to do. So these conversations were at BBI. And if you look at clause 11A, the economic clause, you will see that we are saying not only do we need to share the cake, we also must bake the cake. And part of the baking the cake is production. We must have more promotion of the state must promote productivity and production. And again, you know that young people are part of the groups we are looking at building this economy and building a larger cake than what we have. You look at that clause 11A in its entirety. Naona Lucia already anasoma. Lucia, wewe soma hiyo clause 11A. Utaona hapo hata mambo ya small and medium enterprises. You will see matters of agriculture. You will see matters of intellectual property. You will see matters of investments and enterprises. We really just are going to have to invest more in production as opposed to just sharing the cake. And once the cake is baked, then every Kenyan is entitled to share of that cake. The cake cannot just be taken by those at the top. The cake must really be shared. And that is why you see in 11, it is economy and shared prosperity. And among the matters that are going to need prioritization are matters that are youth related. And that particular area, I think going forward, even as we go to the next election, that will become the electoral area. The youth issues, the president who will win in the next election will be the president who speaks to solutions of young people and who shows what their government is going to do in terms of promoting empowerment of young people in our country. So it is not over. The BBI has some direction in terms of the clauses that are included therein and in terms of the laws that need to be reformulated. But the BBI doesn't, of course, answer all the questions. It just gives a roadmap that if we do the small and medium enterprises well, if we have an economic clause and we invest more money in production, then we are likely to get the resources that we need. But alongside all that is the fight against corruption. If only we could use the little money we have well, if we could use every shilling for the purpose that it is required for, we would have enough money for the commission. Why we don't have enough money for commissions is also because we have very, very high levels of corruption, where something costs 10 times what it should cost. A road costs 3-4 times what it should cost. I think that we really must be able to fight corruption. If we do those things, by and large, the country is going to move in the right direction.
My other question, before I even talk about the cake, is the issues of affirmative action. For you, especially, we talked about the 30% procurement opportunities for youth and women and disabled, actually, PWDs, access to procurement opportunities in government. This thing has come under fire, and you've seen in the news, even as you talk about corruption. There are people who have been put, I don't want to mention names, but there are people who have been put, they are not young people, they are not PWDs, but they are getting tenders and contracts under the 30%. I mean, are you alive to that reality?
Yes, we are alive to that reality, and it's a very, very sad reality for our country. But anyway, many things are sad in our country. I moved the law on access to information in the last parliament, and the reason was exactly what you're saying. And not only the AGPO, by the way, even bursary. You will be surprised at who gets bursary in our country. It is not the people who deserve to get bursary. You will be surprised at who gets the opportunities that are supposed to go to the underprivileged. And I was really, really sad, especially because I myself went to the university on a HELP loan. If my mother, who had heard from another mother, who heard from another mother that there is some help, I would never meanly grow up in Marish before we moved to Nyeri. And in Marish, which is just like 20 minutes away from the city center, we even had no information when ARVs came. A lot of our friends, lost their lives to HIV because they didn't know that ARVs had come. When we went down to Nyeri, for years, we used a paraffin lamp instead of using information about those things that existed. And so part of it is also the energy the youth are going to have to fight for their own rights and to use laws like access to information. It is indeed very, very wrong for somebody who is older to set up a company for their children so that the company for the children can get the procurement opportunities that are supposed to be for young people. And I'm hoping that the money that is going to counties, we fight very hard. For example, the money coming to Nyeri. The young people of Nyeri should get the contracts. There is no reason for money to come to Nyeri and the contracts to be given to people in Nairobi, because now we are not even developing the counties that we need to be developing with the money that is going down to counties. But that is, it will take a lot of training, it will take a lot of advocacy, it will take a lot of oversight, and it will take national ethos. I'm sure you see in that bill a responsibility clause. People just have to be responsible for what is given unto them and to do the right and responsible thing. And I've seen like a company of young people given a contract. It does so well. It even employs other young people and moves the country forward. So you are right, hapo kuna vita.
Yes.
We need to use information, we need to use the courts, we need to make people accountable for the decisions that they make. And we, the young people, must ensure that what is given to us, nobody can tunya us. Kama hata viti za youth kwa assemblies. County mingi ukienda, uonyesha ule myouth na represent youth, hata unasikia tu kuwika, unasikia kuhepa. Myouth ameretire, surely. Hii Kenya yetu najua ni ile ya young at heart. Mtu anakuwa young at heart. Young tax, walikuwa young tax 1940, sijui 1950, 1960, 1970, 1980, they are still young tax.
Uliona kwanza appointment ya president kwa employment commission.
Let me just finish there because unaona hata kwa assemblies, the reason why kuna kiti ya young person ni so that the young person anaingia kwa assembly anaanza kuchampion mambo za young people in the assembly. The Nyeri guy we have, tunamwitanga Nyeri ni sisi, anakuangata mtu wa ICT. Na Beth, unakuta wana try. It is not perfect, but wana try. Kama Nyeri ni sisi juu anafanyanga ICT, alikuwa hata ameleta mambo za digital selling of coffee, because Nyeri is a coffee county. Sasa, hizo vitu za youth, zikikaliwa na wazee, utakuta kwamba zile maswali tunafaa kuwa tunashughulikia tena tushughulikia. Lakini kitu ya youth ndio ibiwe na wazee, it means youth wenyewe walikuwa hawajachangamka, ndio kitu ikaibiwa. Sasa youth, PWDs na women, sisi wote tuchangamke, viti zetu zisiibiwe. PWD kuna hata watu sema ati mimi niko na invisible disability, ati hamwezi iona lakini iko tuko ndani ya mwili, niko tu disabled kiasi uko ndani ya mwili.
Sasa iko kwa roho, ako heartbroken. Ako heartbroken. Najua roho ikivunjika pia labda ni disability.
So tukatae vitu kama hizo.
Lucia.
No, Mahesh, I have a question. Since una realize hii challenge yenye tuko nayo, the fact that hizi resources azifiki wale wase zinafaa kufikia, hii ni kazi yenyu kama commission. Oversight on this one is your work as the commission. I also acknowledge that you have to work closely na Office of the Ombudsman, Commission on Administrative Justice. So what are some of the measures that you've put in place to deal with this problem actually? And also, why is it that hamjawak na young parliamentarians? Because I understand kuna a young parliamentarians association in parliament. Why is it that your commission, the CAJ, has not worked with young parliamentarians to push for some of these things that you're talking about? You know, unaziongelelea manze nikawe uko huko, alafu your commission iko huko, but then you're the person in that commission. I feel like you're the person who should be championing for these things. Manze, na mimi nimefurahia unatoka Marish, man, we ni jirani. It's actually good that naweza ongea na wewe hii lugha ya mtaa. So I feel like you should be championing for these things that you are currently saying here. Na najua pia kuna challenges zenye zinakam na hiyo, but then you see there has to be a trickle down of information from you people in these positions, so that pia sisi kwa ground tujue ni action gani tunaweza take. Manze mkikaa mtuambia mnajaribu kutupigania na kuna venye gavana wafichia waita kuna vitu amwezi achieve kwa sababu ni gavana imefanya hizo vitu. Trust me, si tunaweza toka tuende kwa street. Tunaweza toka tuende kwa street ku demonstrate. Ni kwa sababu hatuna information ya kitu ina happen huko juu. Wewe kama kwa hii commission uko na frustrations zenye zinatoka kwa gava, including funding. Alafu unajiwekea hiyo information. Haukam kuongea na sisi tuambie manze John nilikuwa nataka kudu civic education drive but gava imekataa kunipea do. Tutapushaje for accountability na hatujui. We have no idea, hatujui ni nini inaendelea. Angalia National Employment Authority. Tulienda kotini kwa sababu grandmother Mary Wamboi ndo alipatiwa executive directorship ya hiyo shit na inafaa kuwa inasaidia young people. Tulienda kotini because of that. It's something that we had information on and we knew and we were passionate about, and the structure of it we feel like is going to help us if the right people are in that position. But then at times we don't act simply because we do not know. And you people do not feel the necessity ya kutupatia hiyo information. You've spoken about the Public Access to Information Act. Trust me, I have tried to use that 4 times in government offices last year alone, and I failed horribly. In fact, I was even sexually harassed by a man because I wanted information. And these are the glass ceilings zenye young people tunadeal nazo. Other than being a women's problem, it's a young people problem. Doors are shut in our face. People in positions ignore us. The National Employment Authority thing nilifuatilia sana when Helen Okoki was the acting director general over there, and she even blocked me because she did not expect me to be as persistent as I was, and I'm still persistent on that matter. So when doors are shut in our face, when opportunities are denied to us, when hata uwezi pata foothold ya kuingiza your pinky toe, it becomes so hard for a young person to push for anything. Na kwa sababu hatuna synergies between us and the older generation in this sector, then it just becomes a losing battle.
Dennis, let me go, because you know, Lucia, it is true that there are a lot of frustrations, really. I mean, our country can really frustrate young people, and it has frustrated young people. And these frustrations are the ones that we need to keep, bringing down and breaking the ceilings, as you say correctly. In fact, siku hizi si hata tuzitangi glass ceilings. I think hata zishakuwa za mawe hizi. Kweli. I think ile American young class hiyo huku hii ni ya concrete ni ya cement.
Imekorogewa.
So hard, but we have to keep at it. And I like the challenge that you are throwing in my own direction, really, that we have to do a lot more. I've spent a lot of time in the BBI, partly because I understood the place of law. Wacha kwanza hizi vitu ziandikwe. Wacha tu ziandikwe kwanza. Because itakuandika tu ni story moja. But it is very important ziandikwe. Wacha ziandikwe kwanza. And so now we also have another battle that the BBI needs to pass. Ndio hizi vitu ziandikwe. So zikishaandikwa, now we are pambanaring from a place of writing. Kama hiyo youth commission, wacha iandikwe, wacha inyimwe funding. Now I also agree what you're saying. Kama tutaenda kwa street, ama tutatoa nguo, ama tutatoa shati, whatever we will have to do for the youth commission to get the funding that it requires is what we will do. But for usually for us in law and for the lawyers, it is very, very important to set these rights properly within the law. That is why hata ile biashara fund nilikwambia, bado hiyo biashara fund regulations. Ukiangalia BBI, a big part of the administrative reports are the administrative mechanisms that the government needs to put in place to promote the opportunities of young people. So the first thing for all of us is, let us have clear policies, let us have clear regulations, let us have clear laws, and even a more clear constitution in terms of implementing the youth rights. Remember, ile Article 55 iliyekuwa kwa 2010 constitution, it is a bit of let there be light kind of provision. Now, you just don't want to say let there be youth rights. Can we have a commission that is enforcing the rights of the young people? And you know, it is an incremental journey. Again, not everything happens at once, so every milestone becomes an important milestone. But I agree, and I'm going to talk to our commission and staff. We are about to release a report on AGPO. We are about to release our own audit on AGPO, and we will make that as public as possible. We are also going to release our advisory on AGPO, because commissions like the one that I work for have a role of advising the national government. So we routinely give advisories to the national government on different matters. If you look at PWDs, for example, wakati COVID ilianza, tukuwa na translation ya PWDs, ile ya deaf translation. Our commission wrote very quickly and said we cannot have COVID in which we are not involving the persons with disability, and in which the persons with disability cannot understand the language that we are communicating in. Hata sasa hii BBI, tumeshaanza kusema lazima braille, lazima persons with disability were part of the conversation kabla viti zao ziibiwe. Otherwise wasipojua kwamba hizi viti zinakaa, utakuta tena watu wamekaa huko bunge wanasema ati wako na disability within themselves ambayo haijulikani. So that hizi viti zisiibiwe, it must also ensure that there's a lot of civic education with the groups that are targeted. So we in our commission, I'm going to take the challenges, and it is not everything that we don't do because of funding. Other CC commissions like ours must still be able to do the work that we can with the little resources that we have, so that we then show that if we had more money, we could have done 1, 2, 3. But with the little money that we have been able to do this and that and the other. And I'm going to start to see how we integrate young people in the work we do. We usually have technical working groups in all the counties. We now so far have 29 technical working groups in 29 counties. The groups that we engage with, we need to ensure that as many young people as possible are part of those groups. The sexual harassment that you spoke about, it is actually true with all these problems that we have, even the AGPO and the YAGPO. Part of the reason as you move ni kwa sababu pia kuna sexual harassment kule. Unaambiwa nione kando, ukitaka kupata tenda, ukipata kulipwa. Sometimes imagine hata umesha deliver, unangoja kulipwa, pia kulipwa inakuwa story. Again, utaona kwa BBI hiyo prompt payment bill, kwamba sasa it is already bad enough kupata contract. Surely after all the suffering ya kupata contract, why doesn't the government just pay you at the right time so that your loans and other matters are then addressed? But what I'm saying is that we have some solutions in the BBI. We have some solutions in the law. We have some institutional structures, including the commissions. We now need to move to the next level of the result. It's almost like we have the A, B, and C. A, B, C has been done. We now need to move to D, E, and F. And for that, we need to partner, and for that, we need to work together. And I'm happy that e-conversation is kweni leo peke yake. We need to continue with this conversation. But let me not, let me just continue underscoring that because the BBI has some of the solutions that have been frustrating people, and many Kenyans, many young people, and even the Ministry of Youth was very, very active in championing some of these solutions. By the way, the Minister for Youth, CS Mushero, gave us some really good young people to work with, and those youth waliweza kufanya kazi haraka. When we did Kenoru, Mount Kenya, where I personally come from, we had a very active youth engagement. In fact, in Mount Kenya, we did the tent for everyone, and then we did a tent for young people, a tent for women, and a tent for disability. So that every tent walileta issues zao. Youth wakaleta issues zao, na ndio unaona issue mingi za youth empowerment zimekuwa addressed. Women wakaleta issues zao, disability wakaleta issues zao. Building bridges, ita have to build bridges za youth, ita have to build bridges za disability, na ita have to build bridges za women. Na imeanza ku build hizo bridges. But ni lazima tuzidi challenge so that isikuwe tena ni kuandika tu na isikuwe tena ni kusema peke yake. Hizi mambo ziweze kufuatiliwa na make meaning kwa ground. Ni hiyo pia point niko nayo sana. Si kusema tu mambo huku mtandaoni, lazima hizi mambo zina make sense kwa ground. Na ukweli employment is a crisis. Sisi mahali tuko, mimi sasa nikienda ushago ama hata nikienda tu mahali, watu kama 10 wanakuja na CV. Saidia hapa, saidia hapa, saidia hapa. We are also very harassed. Something must happen in this country, and the economy must be inclusive to women, youth, and disability. And I think atuombi, sometimes I like Lucia's language. Na si tafadhali, ni ati lazima itafunguka. Wacha tupitishe hizi vitu, wacha tuziandike poa. Yusai ukienda kotini watu wanasema, oh, it is not clear, oh, there are no direct obligations, oh, you know, all manner of reasons will be given. Wacha we reconfirm this BBI that indeed this is where Kenyans want the country to go. And if this is where Kenyans want the country to go, then sitafadhali, the country will have to respond to this matter. Thanks a lot.
All right, Mheshimiwa.